guys, it's Liam here again, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing the PlayStation 2 or PS2, which is, it's not my favourite retro console because I don't really consider it to be that old, but it's definitely one of the best consoles of all time, not just because it's one of the biggest selling consoles of all time, but it's just, in my eyes at least, it is one of the best consoles of all time. It was launched in 2000, follow-up to the very successful PlayStation 1, which I covered in a previous video. But I thought it was about time to now finally get round to the PlayStation 2, since the PlayStation 4 came out in November last year. As of the recording of this video, it's June 2014, so it's been out for a while. I've had the PlayStation 4 for a while now. I've chosen that over the Xbox One because I could only afford one or the other. And I've always chosen PlayStation over Xbox. So here we go. Tell you a little bit about the PlayStation 2. Okay, so this is the PlayStation 2. To date, in fact, possibly one of the best-selling video game consoles of all time. It was released in early 2000, around about February, March of 2000. And bearing in mind we're only in 2014 now, this was actually only discontinued in late 2012 to very early 2013. And the fact that this is the PlayStation 2 and we're now already on the PlayStation 4, that just goes to show how well this console actually sold. Now, this is the front of the console where you can see here you've got your power button. Down here is your eject button. Here, this is where the actual CD slide will come out. And you've got your controller inputs here. Now this here is just a PlayStation memory card, very similar to the memory cards of the PlayStation 1, which I've covered in an earlier video. So you've got your memory card slots in here, and you've got your gamepad inputs there. Now around the back of the console, you've got your power switch. If you don't bother leaving it in sleep mode. Well, not that it's officially sleep mode, but you don't have to turn it off here. You can just power it down, or I suppose you could call it sleep mode. And then you've got your AC power to go in the back there. Nothing really to see on the sides. And it's got PS2 written right there on the front, well, on the top, just in case you forget which console you're playing, although very unlikely. And I don't know if you can see it in this light, but it does have PlayStation 2 written right underneath it. Now, the PlayStation 2 was released alongside Microsoft's first ever video game console, which I will cover in another video as well, which was the original Xbox. And again, we're now on the Xbox One already. And it was also alongside Nintendo's first ever attempt at a CD-based console as well, which was the GameCube, again, which you'll find in another video as well. Now, here are some of the things that come with the PlayStation 2. To start off with, of course, you've got your obvious controller, the DualShock controller. It is virtually identical, not completely identical, but I'd say virtually identical to the PlayStation 1's controller. You've got your L and R buttons there, you've got your joysticks, you've got your D-pad, which is rarely used these days, and you've got your typical triangle, O, X and square buttons. That's pretty standard on PlayStation controllers, even right down to the PlayStation 4 controller, which is pretty similar. Give you an example. Moving on a couple of generations, of course, you've got your PlayStation 4 controller. And yes, there are differences, but you can see that they are still very, very similar in appearance. So there's not a massive difference there. Right, now I'll move on and show you the power part of the PlayStation. What actually goes in the back of it. Very, very simple to set up. You've got your standard plug, 3-pin plug, because this is England that this video is made in, so it's not got the American 2-pin plug or anything, and just your rear input cable. So it's all pretty standard. And then for your input at the back, no, I've not got HDMI for this. So there's no HDMI, unfortunately. Never mind. You've got your AV input, which I've got put into a SCART input there. But it doesn't have to be, it can just be your normal AV input. I have most of my consoles that don't run on HDMI connected up to these things, just because I've got a SCART switcher, so that I can connect them all up at pretty much the same time. Now the PlayStation was really, really successful to the point where, just like they do now, they started bringing out a different model of the same console, like a more compact version, which was years later, but it was for those who wanted a different model, and it was just a more refined model, really. And I'll show you the newer PlayStation 2. Well, I say newer, but obviously it's an old console now, but I'll show you the newer PlayStation 2 now, and especially in comparison to the original PlayStation 2. Okay, so as you can see, both of these consoles, despite being extremely different in size, both of these are the PlayStation 2. Now, there's not a great deal of difference with the PlayStation 2 slimmer design model, or just the PlayStation 2 Slim or PS2 Slim, whatever name you want to call it by. But they are pretty similar in appearance. As you can see at the front, you've still got your memory card slots, same as here. You've got your controller inputs here. You've got, again, the USB ports that I never bothered to use. And you've got your power button, or your reset button in this case here. Now, you'll notice that there isn't an eject button on the PS2, or the slimline PS2. Now, the reason for that is because nothing slid out for the PlayStation 2. If you can see it here, there's actually a open button. Oh, it's here, in fact. There we go. It was a top-loading model. Just like what they've done with the PlayStation 3 now, with the PlayStation 3 Slim. The fact that the newer one slides off the top rather than you're putting a CD in. Now, some people don't like this type of top-down or flip-open CD console. Personally, I do prefer them. Mainly because you're very less likely to get a CD or, a game stuck in one of these. It's just really easy to get the CD out if it got stuck in there. Now, there aren't too many main differences at the back here. There's nothing to see on the bottom. Nothing really to see here, other than your standard Ethernet cable. Now, the power and your AV is all pretty much the same. Now, the main difference, though, with the PlayStation Slim, when compared to the original PlayStation, is that the input for the power is different. The input for the power, again, if you remember from the original, was, and I'll show it again, input for the power like this. Now, the input for the power on the PlayStation Slim, it is and it isn't like that, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. This is the input for the power on the PlayStation Slim. Very, very different, and goes easily into the back here. Now, it still has a pretty similar input, though, because the reason why it's so much slimmer is because it has a separate power brick. So rather than this being buried in there to make a bigger machine like this, this is all separate, so you can hide this away. But if you notice, it's still got one of the original ends, so it's still very similar. It's just like it's got its power base on the outside. Now, the PlayStation 2 is renowned for having a brilliant library of games, but to name a few, I mean, one of my favourites, of course, to this date, in fact, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. I'm currently playing Watch Dogs as well on PS4, which seems to have got some criticism because it's not supposed to have been as good as the hype or whatever, but I'm going to get into that another day. But I personally think it's a really good game. But it was the first real attempt at like a 3D open world game. Well, that's telling a lie. In fact, the first one I saw for a 3D open world game was, I think it was pronounced Shemzu or something like that on the Dreamcast. I didn't really play that when it first came out, but I'll cover that in another video maybe. Who knows? But yes, this is the look of the PlayStation. I'm going off on a tangent there. So there's your PlayStation 2 Slimline and your PlayStation 2 Original. Both of them extremely reliable. Both of these have lasted me since the day that they came out. Neither of them have burned out yet, and hopefully they won't. Now with the PlayStation 2, and this will be covered in a future accessories video, rather than just memory cards alone as well, you could also get a 40GB hard drive add-on for the PlayStation 2. Doesn't sound like a lot when you compare it to consoles these days, but 40GB, it's a lot. It would have been a lot for these games anyway, for saving your games on these. Considering you didn't need the space to install anything, 40GB of space for saving games was more than enough. Okay, so there's your PlayStation 2. Okay, and very finally, this is just an example of just a couple of random games I've pulled out just to show you what the PlayStation games look like, or the PlayStation 2 games look like. So, larger cases than that was covered in the PlayStation 1, which I didn't mention earlier in fact, but the PlayStation 2 was also fully backwards compatible with PlayStation 1 games as well, which at the time was a really big bonus. You know, because by the time you got yourself your PlayStation 2, you've already built up your collection of PlayStation 1, and you might only have room on your television to plug one system or the other in. So it means you can neatly pack away your PlayStation and still be able to play all of their games on your newest system. Something that was done with the earlier PlayStation 3, and then with later models was discontinued, but that's a rant for another video. But anyway, here are the games, or I'll show you at least one of them. They're all the same. They're just regular CD games. In physical appearance, they look no different to that of a PlayStation 4 game. In fact, they're all, you know, pretty much the same. And in terms of the cases as well, they haven't evolved very much either. Because if we have a look here at one of the latest generation games from my own collection there, the PS4 game Watch Dogs. Again, very, very similar. So you've just got your CD in there. Only difference, of course, give you a little bit of a space for your memory card there if you're going to get a memory card for every single game. I certainly didn't, but maybe there were some people out there that did decide to get one memory card for every game. I find it unlikely, but there we go. And that's some of the game. That's just some of the games to show you what the actual games look like. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Moving on. Okay guys, so that was my review of the PlayStation 2, the PS2. Hope you enjoyed the video. By all means do comment, give me some ideas on what other types of systems you'd like me to see review in the future. If you can get your hands on either of these two though in the future, I definitely recommend it. They're definitely worth picking up. They're not that expensive either, and the games go for buttons these days as well, and there's so many out there, and they're really good games. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.